So the dream created the discipline, not the discipline creating the dream. That's why, in my opinion, you start with the dream so that you'll even do the work of the other sections.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Follow Lead Podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and learn more about how an energy audit might just save you time and money. Friends, today on the podcast, I'm so excited to share this conversation with Jon Acuff. Jon is a speaker and author, and he's one of those guys that just has a fresh take on life. His latest book, Procrastination Proof, is all about how we can lean into the idea of not getting stuck. I love this conversation with Jon. We talk about speaking, we talk about accountability, giving and receiving feedback, what it means to lean in, the right yeses, the right nos, and when to pivot. This was so rich and good. I'm so thankful for Jon's voice in my life, and I'm excited to share him with you. So now, a quick word from our partners, and here's my conversation with Jon Acuff. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to finally, one of my top 5 guests of all time, have Jon Acuff on the podcast. Jon, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your message.
I look forward to this one, man. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
One of the things that we're doing this year, you and I talked about before I hit record, is this idea about leaning into the 12 most Googled leadership questions. Mm-hmm. And this month's question is all about leadership style and effectiveness. So let's say that you're sitting across from a young leader, maybe somebody who wants to make a huge dent in the world and kind of lean into what God has for them. How would you answer this question? How do I know what my leadership style is, and how do I know if it's effective?
Yeah. So, I mean, the short answer is I would ask them questions. Like I would, I'm a big believer in you should be the most curious about yourself. Like I'm the greatest Jon Acuff salesman in the world. And I know that because before every good decision I've ever made, I talk myself into it. Before every bad decision I've ever made, I talk myself into it. So you should be curious about yourself. In this situation, I'd ask you a bunch of questions to figure that out to get some more information. But I've got a book where we talk about 4 different kind of approaches to procrastination. And one's the dreamer, how they approach. One's the perfectionist. One's the hustler. One's the analyst. So I would probably say, hey, let's walk through this little quiz. Like we've got a little quiz that'll kind of lump you into one of those 4 and then figure out, okay, does that resonate with you? Can you give me examples of times when you were so good at dreaming, but you never made a decision. So the perfectionist you work with couldn't actually plan. And that's frustrating because it's frustrating to be led by a dreamer when you're a doer, and they never will finalize an idea. And they're like, what if, like right up until the deadline. And so that's the process I'd use. And the link is jonacuff.com/quiz for anybody who wants to try it for themselves. But I would try to get you to answer some questions. And then I would try to hold up a mirror to you so you can see yourself. I think 100% self-awareness is impossible, which is why we need community. We need other people around us that go, hey, I know you think it's this way, but here, let me reflect back to you some things you're really good at that you think are natural. Like that's a great example. The talent we have the hardest time recognizing is our own. We can see other people's talent really clearly, but then somebody will go, that was amazing what you did. And you go, oh, that thing, that was nothing. It's just something I do. And you go, no, that's special. We all can't do that thing you did. So I think that's part of it is I would try to hold up a mirror to you so you can see what you're actually capable of.
One of the things that's interesting is when I talk to a lot of leaders, we all comment or lament about how busy we are. And you are certainly one of those guys. You're talking to groups all the time. You're writing book after book. You're coaching, you're doing all of the different parts. How do you create a rhythm that says having people who can speak the truth to me in love and grace is important? Like I hear that, like you've got to have people who can tell you what you're good at and maybe what you're not so good at. But how do you create a rhythm that promotes that feedback loop?
Well, I mean, I think it takes time. It takes time and vulnerability. And when they give you the hard feedback, you can't overreact or they'll never give it to you again. If you ask somebody to tell you the truth and then you argue the truth, you've just closed down that particular relationship. But I'll give you one small example today. So I do this morning workout called F3. It's a free men's boot camp. It's held outside, rain or shine. It's peer led. It's all volunteer, and I love it. It's 5:30 in the morning. It was 8 degrees the other day when we did it. It's been fantastic. I didn't know how much male community I was missing until I did it. And so every session, there's 6 days a week, somebody else leads. So it's all volunteer. So a buddy of mine texted me the other day and was like, hey, I'd love you to lead next Tuesday. And I was like, sure, no problem. But I didn't go into our Slack channel and actually sign up. I just said, yeah, sure, no problem. And so then today he was like, hey, so-and-so's leading next week. And I was like, what about me? He's like, I'm not your secretary, bro. Like, if you agreed to do it, go sign up for it. And he was right. Like, he was right. Like, he called me out, and it wasn't a big call out, but he was right. And so a lot of it is having a relationship where there's time that somebody can go, no, dude, that's not the way we do that thing. And then I have to receive it and go, yeah, he's right. I kind of acted like a diva. Like, yeah, you go sign up for me, and it was like, oh, so I think you just have to foster it. And it doesn't have to be 1,000 people. Like, it's a pretty short list of people who get to speak to that part of, like that wasn't a big situation, but it's like my wife, my good friend, my small group guys that are in my small group that can be like, hey, you've been really isolating, like what's going on? And so but I think you have to have the time for it, and you have to have the space for it. And then you have to continually reassure people when they do it that it's what you want done, or they won't do it.
What if you're at a place where you're like, I know I need this, but I don't really want it? Do you have any suggestions on how to get over that, like, fear of what people say? Because I think some of us have this. I have had. Let me just make it about me. I have had seasons of my life where I'm like, I really want honest feedback. Except I want that honest feedback for you to tell me that it's good, right? Like,
yeah,
right? Like, it's
yeah. Dude, I did that. Like, whoever wants it. I don't want it. Yeah. I want the benefits of it. But my initial thought there, like, I'm not like, oh, thank you for that vitamin. It tasted terrible, but I know long term it'll help me. Like, I just want the benefits of it. And I focus on that. Then it helps me push through the uncomfortableness of actually getting it. So if you're in that season where you're like, I don't want it, but I want the benefits of it, I would spend a lot of time staring at the benefits. We tend to stare at the fear of like, they're going to judge me. They're going to tell me something that I've done wrong. It's going to be embarrassing. I'm the only one who's made this mistake. No one else ever has. Like, one of the big lies of the enemy is like when another person tells me something that they need feedback on or they're struggling with, I always think that person's so brave. Like, they're so brave. When I go to do that myself, I think I'm so weak. They're going to think I'm so weak that I'm not talented or whatever. And so I just think it's that. But you asking, like, I want them to tell me it's great, dude, I did that. I'll never forget. This was like 8 years ago. I asked an agent, one of my speaking agents, like, to give me some feedback. And dude, I just wanted his feedback to be like, you're the greatest ever. You're like better than Martin Luther King Jr. Like your speeches, like, and he gave me some real feedback. And and I didn't react in the moment. My face probably did, if I'm honest, but like I wasn't like, screw you, whatever. But like, I remember being insulted and I had to have a gut check of like, oh, I was asking for compliments. Like, that's all I wanted was compliments. So I hope I can be brave enough to go, man, I'm struggling right now. Will you tell me a couple things I'm doing well? Like, and that's vulnerability. Or not ask the question at all under the frame of like, I'd love feedback because I want to get better. Like, it was so, I knew what I was doing. And when I overreacted in the moment, I was like, oh, I was doing that. So but I don't think it ever gets easy where you're like, I love having people point out mistakes I've made. Like, you're a psychopath if you're like, oh, it feels great. It doesn't feel great. But the results of what it turns into is worth the not feeling great.
Yeah, I think in my wife has always been a very good truth teller for me, whether I want it or not. And so what I had to learn is sometimes when I get off a platform and I'm like, it was particularly vulnerable, and I was like, I just need you to tell me I did a good job. Just ask for what I really need. I just want to ask.
I'll get feedback tomorrow, but in this moment, or like 3 days from now, I'll be ready to process feedback. But in this moment, I just need to be like, good job, you did it. Yeah, totally.
I'm always curious for someone who's a writer like you are, someone who's constantly putting work out into the world. How do you discern God's voice in the next book that you need to write? Like, how did you all of a sudden you're like, well, I put it off long enough, pun intended. It's time to do Procrastination Proof, right? Or versus soundtracks or versus some of the other ones. Like, how do you discern when it's like, okay, this is the moment?
Dude, I love that question. That's a great question. So this one was really fascinating. I thought it was procrastination. I went through a couple different topics, and I went to every of my previous books that I'd written, Soundtracks, Finished, Do Over, All It Takes Is a Goal, and I hadn't used the word procrastination one time.
Wow.
So and that to me was such a God moment, that in a list of, fears or problems 5 books ago, 3 books ago. So when and it built, I looked at the first book, I was like, I didn't use it in Quitter. Oh, I didn't use it in Start. I didn't use it. And it was just it was building. I was like, there's no way that as many books as I've written, I've never used the word procrastination in a book. So that's where I was like, oh, that to me is a great confirmation. I mean, the other way I think about it is when I react or write something that isn't how I'd normally react, I go, oh, Holy Spirit, thanks for the high five. I can't claim that. I received that. I can usually feel when I've received an idea versus when I forced an idea, where I'm like, oh man, that was a really special thing. I really appreciate that. I'm so grateful. That feels different than when I force something.
It's interesting. This new book is on the tail end of your last book that you actually wrote with your daughter, right? And How Teens Win. And I have always followed your work, so it was so fun to watch that kind of unroll. But what you don't often see that I know through my own writing is that writing, writing a book is one thing, but actually getting the book out into the market, into the world, and seeing how people respond is a completely different emotional response. As I was kind of preparing for our dialogue today, the thought came over me, how was it parenting your first-time author daughter in that moment of watching the book come out into the world?
Well, so I would say there was some things I did right, some things I did wrong. Ellie and McCrae helped me write these 2 books, Your New Playlist, How Teens Win. And one thing I did wrong was I threw them into too much of a deep end in certain areas. For instance, we recorded the last day of the audiobook on the last day of senior high for my youngest daughter. So she had to drive from the last day of high school and have the composure to sit in a studio and record an audiobook. That was a mistake on my part. She came in pretty frazzled, understandably so, and her sister jumped in and said, hey, I'll read this chapter, you take a break. So things like that where it's I wish I had given them more space. But the things that I think helped was I would explain situations as they happen and we'd talk about them. So an example of that would be, we had a podcast, my oldest daughter and I had a podcast where the person was really unprepared and cut it off in 17 minutes. And it was a pretty bad experience. And it was somebody that she looked up to. And we were like, oh, and she that kind of hurt her feelings. And after I got to say this person, that was not personal about us. They are very busy and they didn't have time to prepare. And it's an honor. They're trying to help us sell the book, to kind of explain, that's part of the process of releasing a book. And then I was deliberate about helping them not go read 1-star reviews on Amazon. Cause I know that's not going to help their little hearts. Hey, let's not spend any time or not getting them addicted to the Amazon rankings. So I was pretty deliberate about the experience, keeping it positive versus hey, now remember, your ranking on Amazon does reflect your identity. That is, so there are things like that I think we really, but we've talked with them about all this kind of work stuff for so long that it's pretty natural. Meaning in our house, one of the soundtracks I use is, if you want a kind 16-year-old, teach a 6-year-old kindness and give them 10 years to practice. Yeah. And so we've talked about work and growth and critics and all this stuff for so long that I think it's kind of it's a shared language in our house at this point. Not done perfectly by any means, but it's something we talk about.
How does it feel going into this particular piece of writing without either of the 2 girls? I mean, obviously you continue to write. Is it just get back on a horse, or does it feel different? I guess what I'm really asking, is it lonelier?
No, I mean, I've got such a good team now. I've got Jenny really involved. I've got a researcher named Brandy that helped with a lot of the research. So no, I'd say my process has become wider, meaning I have more people read it beforehand. So it doesn't, I would say my travel, if you said, what's the part of your job that's lonely? Travel used to be pretty lonely. But now the president of the company will come with me on events. Tomorrow we're going to Vegas and he's coming with me on that. And then we're empty nest now. So Jenny, my wife, came with me on probably 20 events last year. So that part, if you think about the career I do, which is kind of ideas and writing and speaking's the weird one because you go from 2,000 people on stage to by yourself in a hotel room. That emotional like high to that low. Like I remember at Catalyst, I spoke at Catalyst, I don't know, 8 years ago, and I did a breakout and it killed. Like it was the biggest breakout they had. It was awesome. I was like on this huge high, and there was a speaker's dinner, but I got the directions wrong. And so I ended up at a Firehouse Sub like 10 minutes later, and 3 of the people that had been in my breakout were like, dude, what are you doing here? And that's the kind of thing where you're like, and I ate dinner with them because I was like, at least they're humans, like that's the kind of loneliness that I think is more, prominent in kind of the world I live in.
One of the things that's been fun to watch you do over the years is interweave comedy and communication. I think there are a lot of leaders who are listening who want to give really punchy messages or authentic or real messages, and they want to do it with a little bit of levity, and they're trying to be a little, like quick wit isn't always a muscle that you're born with. Sometimes you have to actually like work at it, and I know you work at it really hard. Mm-hmm. If you were sitting across from a leader who wants to get better at good communication, what are a couple of the tips?
Dude, I love these questions. This one's really on the top of my mind because we have an event we do, a 2-day intensive called Stage and Page, where it's like, how do you master the stage side of things? How do you master the book side of things? And one of the things I teach in the stage section is about humor. Okay, like what are the 7 ways to use humor? Or how, so like an example would be where I would start if I'm sitting across the table from somebody and they go, hey, I want to be funnier in my speeches. I would try to get them to understand what type of funny they are. The easiest way is to go, tell me about how you're funny at a dinner party. And if they go, oh, I'm really slapstick, I'm over the top. Great, do that on stage. I'm really dry and sarcastic. Great, do that on stage. I combine words nobody expects me to combine. Great, do that on stage. The problem is when leaders go, I read a book, I heard a podcast that I have to be funny, and then they use a style of humor that isn't theirs, and it feels like you're wearing your dad's coat at the 8th grade dance. Like it just doesn't fit. So I always try to go like, everybody's funny in their way. What's your way and how can we apply that? And then you can get pretty strategic and go, okay, one of the ways you can use humor is to amplify a point, to make a point really big so that people can see it. And you're like, all right, let me, like an example of that would be, I have a slide that says, you're the most persuasive person you've ever met, because you've talked yourself into every bad decision. And then the example I use is, hey, have you ever eaten a whole bag of a snack by yourself? And at the end of it, you realize in horror that the outside of the bag says party size. And you think, party of one, just me and my mouth. And so I'm using that to amplify the point, but also soften a hard thing. So an example of that would be, like I have this story where I say, the hardest part of the 11th diet is the first 10 that didn't work. And that's kind of a heavy thought because it's true of anything. Like you start another church and the one that didn't work kind of comes up. The enemy brings up those failures. And so that's a hard statement. So then I soften it by saying, it's my favorite current joke that like, if you buy a Peloton, your Bowflex will crawl out of the garage. Like it'll be like, remember me, bows are the future. And then I add another layer. Like humor for me is about layers. So that one hits, but what really hits is I go, even your thigh master will come out of the closet. And that hits. But then I go, if you're younger than me, let me explain what a thigh master is. And I say in the knees, a scientist named Suzanne Summers. And scientist named Suzanne Summers destroys because it's clearly so ridiculous. She wasn't a scientist. Like she, but I'm using that one to soften and explain the hard point of the old mistakes we may get loud when we try the new adventure. And like, okay, how can I show that in a way that makes it sticky, that makes it memorable? So that's what I would say, though, is like I try to help you find your version of humor, and then I would try to find places in your talk to use that humor strategically, to use it, intentionally, and to weave it in. You used the word, you said weave it in. You're 100% right. Where leaders make a mistake, or pastors or speakers, is they have a funny intro and there's no connection to the content. So a good speech has 2 parts, in my opinion, islands and bridges. Island being a main talk, the bridge that gets me to the next point. And some people leave their audience on the first island because they never made a clear bridge to the next point. So where you see that with humor is people go, hilarious story about college football or something crazy my kid did. And they go, now let's talk about God. And it's this hard left turn that has nothing to do with the thing. And you just left everybody up on that island of that story. You didn't bridge them. And you were kind of like, you figure out how these things are related. Like that, the audience, that's not the audience's job. Your job is to take me on that next bridge. So yeah, that's the kind of thing, like speaking and writing. I love helping people kind of dial that in because I think it's the best thing in the world.
How many times do you tweak a talk before you're like, no, this is legit good?
Well, in my opinion, a talk is never done, meaning I'm going to improve it. I'm going to tweak it. Like I have a talk, the soundtracks talk I've probably done 100 times. I recently added a story about the Orlando Magic because I went and spoke to the Orlando Magic and I learned this really fascinating thing. I'm like, oh, that's a great illustration for this. Or this joke now feels memorized and it's no longer hitting. And if I'm not having fun with it, they're not having fun with it either. But the way I do it, the process is I write out the whole talk. I write out the entire talk, and then I kind of go through it, and I practice it out loud with a Sharpie. So I hold a Sharpie in my hand, and as I'm speaking it with a timer, I'm writing down ideas that come up. Because there's some ideas that won't come up unless I'm saying them out loud, and then I'm writing them down. And then so that's where, so I'm kind of shaping, and then I try to get about 80% of it like memorized to a degree, and let 20% of new stuff show up, like in the moment. Like what is, because I think that's the best part for an audience is that when they can tell it's happening for the first time for both of you. And that's where, like, from a faith perspective, like, it's total Holy Spirit. Like any speaker who is a believer, I always say, like, you should take the pressure off yourself, because we've all had the moment where you get off stage and somebody goes, that thing you said was for me. And you go, which thing? And they go, and they tell you something you didn't say. And the Holy Spirit remixed it in the way that they needed to hear it. And so, like, the pressure's off. Like, the Holy Spirit's remixing constantly. So I don't have to memorize it perfectly, because the Holy Spirit's remixing it for each individual person in that room when it comes to, like, a church setting.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you talk a little bit about this on your Instagram over the years, and it really changed the way that I preach, in terms of, like, instead of, like, packing it all in for the full 35 or 37 minutes that I'm authorized, I dial it back to that 80%, and then I just let it ride. And the worst thing that could happen is somebody gets done early, and then they're like, hey, he was the best ever because he got done early, right? There's no pressure in filling the gap if it's okay to have a gap, right? Nobody ever gets mad that you ended early. They
don't know what you skipped. Nobody knows the joke you didn't get to or the point you didn't make. Nobody in the audience is like, I really think he had 5 points, but he cut it down to 4. I really would have liked that fifth point. They don't know. And so, like, and I think that's a common mistake, and it's one I made for years, of overfilling a talk where you're like, I have to have every idea. I heard a talk the other day. They had 6 main points and then 3 other points. They had 9 points. I was like, nobody is remembering any of this, but there's this fear of, like, what if I finish too soon and I got like 30 minutes left? And most people, that's never the problem. Like, it's never like you, in that moment, you'd come up with a different story, or in that moment, you pace it. I had one of my coaches that I hired. There's a guy named Bill Hampton who's helped me. And we were at an event, and he was like, dude, I will give you $100. Like, he went out and got money out of the ATM in the hotel lobby. He's like, I'll give you $100 if you take a drink of water during your talk. He's like, you're going so fast, there's too much content. And I was like, game on. So you better believe that I was, like, really deliberate about pausing and taking it. And I got off stage. I was like, let's go. Where's that $100? But he's the one that helps me do the stage and page events. And so, like, that's the kind of stuff that, as a speaker, as a communicator, you kind of nerd out about and go, okay, what are those little things that actually do have an impact? Because if it feels rushed to the crowd, it feels overwhelming. And they've already had a busy day, most of them. And so it's like, it puts them in a bad place, in my opinion.
In your latest book, Procrastination Proof, Never Get Stuck Again, you start every kind of section with an important question. And it's a pointed question. It's a realistic question, but you start with dream, right? What do I want to do? I thought it was fascinating, and I love to hear the creative process. Why start a book on procrastination about what people want to do? Because I feel like people who procrastinate want to do everything. Yeah, so the big thing is, you won't do the work of changing your life without a dream. Like, I've helped more than 1 million people with goals, and I still haven't met somebody that said, today I woke up and decided to have grit. Today I decided to have sacrifice. Today I decided to have willpower. That's never why you change. You change for one of 2 reasons: desire or disappointment.
Like there's a thing you desire that you don't have, or there's a disappointment. No one ever willingly leaves their comfort zone, and they shouldn't. It's comfortable. What always happens is there's something outside it that's worth being uncomfortable for, like that's worth doing the work. So where we get it backwards is we think we have to be disciplined and then we get to dream. And the reverse is true, in my opinion. You have a dream and it creates discipline. So my story is, I didn't stop watching as much TV and getting up early because I was disciplined when I was in my mid-30s. I started a blog and I got this taste of there's this whole world out there. I had this blog called Stuff Christians Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, and then I wanted to watch less TV because TV was giving me nothing. I thought of my little blog like a little fire, and I wanted to throw logs, which are just hours, into it and get it to be ablaze. I didn't get up early because I was disciplined. I got up early because it was the only time to write before my 2 kids who were under the age of 4 got up. So the dream created the discipline, not the discipline creating the dream. That's why, in my opinion, you start with the dream so that you'll even do the work of the other sections.
So one of the things that I often hear from some leaders is that they have a dream for their company, they have a dream for their people, but they struggle to dream for themselves.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Especially these servant leaders who are like putting in the hours and like, oh, we just got to get this thing to 50 million, then everybody gets a bonus and payouts and all this stuff. And so what are some of the things that we could do to cultivate that very deeply personal dream for someone?
Well, and that's why the book, the solution is permission. Like in that situation, it's like that person probably hasn't given themselves permission to have a dream, or they've got some broken interpretation of it that like leaders don't get to dream. That being a good leader means like you're always last and hopefully never in the picture at all, like because you're a leader. And so I think in a situation like that, it'd be fun to kind of get to the heart of like, what does that mean? Like even just say like define what success for a leader is, or just define your personal definition of success. Like what is it, And then with Christianity, I mean, we just have a hard time with success in general.
Man.
Like we really do. Like we struggle with that. And so I often call leaders back to the parable of the talents, where it's like 5 and 2 and 1. And it says they immediately put them to work, which meant they were already in motion. It doesn't say they prayed for 6 months. Like it's like, oh, they put them to work. And then there was a celebration when they got back. Like I want to be attending that party where I go, God, I did this thing. And like I used the talent you gave me, and like, oh, like it worked. And he's like, wow. Versus we often play it small in the name of God. And so for me, the enemy wins 2 ways when it comes to your dream or your gift: when you abuse it or you don't use it. And abusing it can be a million different things. Like you grow a church really large because you're drunk on adoration and eventually it falls apart from a power trip or an affair or whatever. But not use it is equally as common, meaning I play it small because I don't get to have a dream. Dreams are for other people. And we have a God who's like, no, they're for everybody. And it takes vulnerability. A leader gets to hide if they're not part of the dream. Like you don't, if it's only for other people, not for you, you get to kind of hide in that.
I followed you for a number of years, and one of the things that's always intrigued me is your pivots. Because I've seen you make them, right? From the blog when I first kind of introduced to your work, and then you went to work for another company, then you started your own company, and just recently you even you got into your own like hard physical space instead of just working out of your home, right? And I think
totally.
So I'm curious, how do you discern when it's time to take that big next scary kind of step or pivot, or like, all right, well, I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm wildly successful, pretty much wildly now, respected everywhere I go. Now it's time to gain overhead, right? Like, I mean, how do you know? How do you know when to lean in?
I think I think about it like tests. Like I'm going to do a test. I'm going to try this, and I'm going to, for me, it's like, I kind of have a checklist of decisions that I think through, meaning, did I get wise counsel? Like, did I, so with just take the overhead of expanding the company, getting a physical space, I talked with my father-in-law. Like he ran $1 billion company in his career, and he's my father-in-law. So like he has some skin in the game. Like he wants his grandkids to be okay. Like, so am I willing to go talk to somebody and get wise counsel of somebody who might tell me, I don't know if this is the right decision, or I don't know if this is the right time. 2, am I being impulsive? If somebody tells me, hey, I think you should think about it for another week, and I react in anger, then, ooh, okay, that's a good sign for me. I need to slow down. If I overreact to their like wait for a week to think about it. So like, was I impulsive? Did I do research on it? Did I, I love the book, The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. And he talks about second order consequences. Did I think about what the second order consequences would be? Like about, okay, I can see the immediate, but what could like, let's pull it out a year. So for me, if I run through kind of that filter and it's not like, if it doesn't work, I lose everything. Like I'm willing to invest X amount of dollars and time into this thing. And I feel like I have expertise in it. And another thing is like, am I bored of the other thing? Have I mastered the other thing to where like, if I'm not careful, I'm going to be into like King David at a time when kings were at war, David was at home. Like, am I at home right now? Like, if I'm being honest, am I at home right now? Like, am I being challenged? Am I doing the things? So it's that kind of thing. But then also being able to pivot and go, okay, I tried it. It didn't work. Like I tried it. And like my wife is great at not like allowing me to beat myself up in those moments. Because what happens, I think, when leaders pivot is, at least for me, like the worst version of me was like 30 to 34 in Atlanta. Just a knucklehead. Like if I thought 50 years, that's the knucklehead season. That's my Taylor Swift era. I'm a knucklehead. So now at 50 to not go, hey, I'm changing this thing because I made a mistake and I'm just like that guy I used to be. And she's like, no, what? No, like you can't beat yourself up. She just said to me the other day, I think you use shame as a form of dopamine because it's easy and endless, and it's a lot easier than success. And I was like, oh, I have to unpack that one. Like it's bottomless, and I can make myself feel bad and get a little bit of hit, cortisol, dopamine, whatever. I'm like, I'm gonna have to think about that one. That's good. But yeah, so I think if I work through that process, I feel pretty good about the pivot.
So a year from now, let's do the champagne question. Let's say you come back on the podcast a year from now and we're popping bottles of whatever your preference is. I don't really care. But like, what are we celebrating about what God has done through you and the work that you do?
Yeah, so specifically the work, I mean, like my oldest daughter will be graduating from grad school. Like that's a big celebration. There's a lot of family stuff, but specifically career-wise, like I would take it as a huge success if the book had, sold X amount of copies. Like if the book had sold 100,000 copies in a year, that'd be awesome. But also that I've done multiple stage and page events so the office you mentioned, we can do 20-person events there. If we've done 4 or 5 of those where I've been able to equip other speakers, other writers, like that to me, like I'm still blown away I get to do that. And the idea that I could help save somebody years on their experience. Like, dude, I made $1 million titling mistake once on a book. Like it just doomed the book. And so if a writer says to me, hey, I want to figure out how to do my title, I can legitimately go like, hey, I've paid a very expensive price. I would love to give you this information because it'll save you so much heartache. Or they say, a speaker says to me, I don't know how to get to the next level. And I go, okay, you need to get really good at customer service. Like the flip for me happened when I saw speaking as an act of service, not an act of performance. Because then I go, I'm here to make the person in the audience win, not make them think I'm cool. Like that changes it. And they can feel that and it changes my process. Like one of the things for speaking that helped me was going, I'm not the bride. Like at this event, I'm not the bride. The CEO might be the bride. The bonus they're all hoping they get that's announced at this event is they're like, I'm carrying in the best plate of chicken they've ever had. Like that's important at a wedding. It is. But let's keep things in perspective. Like I'm there an hour. The CEO's there all year. How do I make her win? Like and if I can teach a young speaker that and go, man, for like 7 years, I'll give you one last practical example because I love nerding out on this stuff and hopefully it'll help somebody. So maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give gifts as a thank you after an event. I speak at an event, I'm going to give somebody a gift. So I have this briefcase I love. It's by Tom Ben. It's awesome, American made. So I bought this woman that had booked me to speak at an event, a briefcase, wrote a note, etc. So a year later, I go back to that same company and the sound engineer has a briefcase that looks like mine. And I'm like, oh, it's weird. I have the same one. He goes, oh yeah, some dude gave it to my boss. She didn't want it. And in that moment, what I realized was I gave her a gift I liked, not a gift she liked. That's a huge breakdown. Like in the absurdity that I could buy a woman I barely know a bag. I couldn't buy my wife a purse right now and have her go, this is just my style. So then what I started to do is when I'm on site, I ask, what do you do for fun? and we start a conversation. And then if they tell me something and we actually have an interaction, then I'll get them something related to that. So if they say, hey, like one of my examples, this guy Chuck, who I love, he was like, growing up, I loved the Cincinnati Reds, and Eric Davis was my favorite player. So I got him an Eric Davis rookie card, like just found it on eBay. Like no other speaker had ever done that. That's the kind of stuff that, again, took me 18 years. And if I can bottle that down and go like, dude, you're going to get like a 10-year head start in a single day. That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm currently really excited about, the book and those events.
So my community, we call them the bold ones, bold leadership, bold in faith, and they love to pray. And so as this book enters into the world, what's the prayer request that we can come alongside you with?
I would say that it makes its way into the right hands. So I have a running group with my pastor, Kevin Queen, and an elder, Rob Santel, and Justin Johnson, our campus pastor. And years ago, and we run every couple weeks on a Saturday, their prayer about soundtracks was, I hope it gets into the right leader's hands. Hope it gets into a CEO's hands. And I got to see that answered, like so specifically. It was so fun. I was at an event, and the CEO said, hey, do you know how you got here? And I was like, no, I'd love to know. And he goes, my wife was listening to a podcast about weight loss, and you were interviewed. And she was like, oh my gosh, you got to read this book, Soundtracks. And she made me get your book. And then I booked you to speak at this company. And I can't, you say the Holy Spirit with ideas. I can't claim that. I can't go, I knew it. I knew that CEO's wife listened to that weight loss podcast. Like I had no ability to claim that as like, John's so good. I only got to kind of receive that and go, oh, it got into the right hands. So like with a book, it's always like that it would get into the right hands, like that it would find its way into the right hands and help the right people.
So good. Okay, I have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I know the bold ones are going to want to find you all over the internet. Sure. Where's the best thing to learn all things, best place to learn all things Jon, and where they can take I know you mentioned the quiz already. Of course, we'll link to that in the show notes, but where can they pre-order the book? Yeah,
so you can pre-order it anywhere books are sold, depending on when this comes out. When's this episode come out?
The week of the book release, the 14th.
Oh, great. Yeah. So if this week, I would still go to jonacuff.com/go. And if you pre-order the book, you get the whole audiobook for free. So it's just my name, jonacuff.com/go. I'm also doing a lot on LinkedIn right now. I'm really enjoying LinkedIn. I love the conversations that are happening on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm all the spots, and I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal.
Love it. The last question we're asking all the leaders this year is about the greatest leader that you've ever met. And so we would love to hear the greatest leader you've ever met in person, flesh, no Jesus answers. So who is that person for you and why?
Greatest leader I've ever met. Well, I mean, it feels like the Jesus answer is also like you say your dad. My dad, I learned a lot from my dad, but outside of my dad, greatest leader I've ever met. Well, I mean, I had the privilege of working with Dan Cathy about 15 years ago. I was helping him with his leadership blog. So I travel a little bit with him. And I'll give you one story of his leadership that I thought was really interesting. So we were at the Georgia Dome. It was the day before the Chick-fil-A Bowl, probably the biggest event Chick-fil-A puts on all year, hundreds of people running around. And I was there with Dan because I was going to work on an idea with him. And he was playing his trumpet the next day. And it was a rehearsal. So anyway, he gets a phone call and he's like, hey, let me take this real quick. Comes back. He's like, sorry about that. That was a sophomore from the high school Sunday school class I teach. He wanted to see if he could get tickets to the game tomorrow. And the three things I learned in there, one, he wasn't too busy to teach high school Sunday school. Like, he's a billionaire with a B. I know some thousandaires that are too busy for people. They're like, once you get to this mid-Kia lifestyle, you don't have time for these regular people. Like, he's a billionaire and made time for it. 2, the kid had his real phone number. The kid was connected enough. 3, the kid felt important enough to bother Dan. The higher you go up in leadership, the worse they let you behave, if you're not careful. The higher you go up, the worse they let you behave, where they go, hey, they're too busy to do that. They can't do that. Like, he doesn't remember any of his staff's name, but he's so busy or she's so busy. And they let you kind of behave poorly. And I get to experience that on a micro level when I show up to an event and I'm easy to work with and I'm kind and I care about the sound team. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. The last guy wouldn't sign 50 books. And I'm like, 50 books? I signed 1,000 for Lexus. That was a process, 50 books. And that person was like, no, I don't sign books. that person must be famous enough that they get to behave poorly. So I got to watch that in that moment. Like that moment for me encapsulated a lot about how Dan, and it wasn't for anybody else. Like I'm the only one that knows that story. Now I've told other people because it's fun to celebrate Dan and go like, look how good that are. Like it wasn't for a media interview he'd hope would get out. It wasn't on stage. Like it was just a real thing he did that I guarantee he doesn't even remember. And so for me, that's why I like whenever somebody asks me a leadership story, I think about that because I'm like, man, I got to learn a lot in that.
Did he give the kid tickets?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't get the conclusion. My favorite part of that story, I don't know if he gave him tickets, but my favorite part is the chutzpah of that kid, because that sophomore in high school was sitting around with his friends the day before the game. Was like, "We have any tickets? Hold up, let me call Danny C.
I got a guy.
Yeah, I got a guy. Who is it? Dan Cathy. Like Danny C. You know, you didn't invent the chicken, just the chicken sandwich. How about you invent some tickets? So yeah, that story cracks me. When I think about that kid, I'm like, he's probably an executive somewhere crushing it. Because anybody who has the chutzpah to be like, no problem, I'll check out Dan Cathy, see what he's got available. The story makes me laugh every time I think about it.
So good. Jon, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. Thanks for continuing to put great content out in the world that I enjoy, and I know my leaders do as well. So thank you.
Dude, honored that we finally made it happen. Looking forward to hearing it come out, dude. I appreciate the support.
I told you guys, what a great conversation. I absolutely love Jon's heart. I love the way he kind of leans in to giving and receiving feedback, and the way that he's so good at making complex things simple. I know you're going to love his book, Procrastination Proof. I also, if you haven't listened to his book, your new playlist or soundtracks, some really great stuff there. Be sure to check them out. One of the things I love to do is leave you with a coaching question. Today's coaching question is all about procrastinating. Where are you procrastinating in life? What are the things that you need to build a system that protects you from you? Lean in. Because remember, information plus application is what leads to transformation. As always, I'm forever thankful for you, the bold ones, thankful to be a part of this community. And if there's anything I can do for you, you know I'm easy to find. Tony@twmilt.com or on Instagram @twmilt. And remember, friends, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.